All right, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, my name is Alison Ferlita. I'm the Executive Director for the Nonprofit Resource Hub. We are an association that provides services, education, and goods to the nonprofit community. And we offer webinars just like this, educational webinars that help you do your job better. Today, we are offering a really great workshop, the Neurodiversity in the Workplace workshop. We know this is a very important topic. This is very important in incorporating this into our workplace. And we have three really amazing, well-versed professionals who have been doing this for quite some time, who will help answer your questions, share some wisdom, lessons that they've learned along the way, and help you in diversifying your workplace with neurodiversity. So I would like to welcome Patrick, Michael, and Christine to today's webinar. If you are going to be asking questions, I did put it in the chat. Please do put your name, your title, and your organization first before your question. This way we know who we're talking to, and you will have plenty of time to do that. This is being recorded, so your recording will be available to you on Tuesday morning after the holiday, so please note that. And without further ado, we are going to kick it off. I would like to welcome Patrick Bardsley, co-founder and CEO of Spectrum Designs Foundation. Welcome, Patrick.
Yes, thank you so much, Alison, and thank you to Serini and everyone for putting this together. As Alison said, I'm Patrick Bardsley. I'm co-founder and CEO of Spectrum Designs. We are predominantly a custom apparel and promotional items business, but with a really unique social mission. Our mission is to create neurodiverse employment and training opportunities for those on the autism spectrum, but really in the neurodiverse world. We've been doing it for over 10 years, and we're now proud to be at almost 80 employees, with about 45 being disclosing as being, in some form of on the autism spectrum. We are a nonprofit, so 100% of the proceeds go back in, and we do all kinds of printing for large and small corporations, as well as having a boutique laundry business here in Port Washington on Long Island, where we do wash and fold for 100+ local residents. Same mission, same employment goals. And so, yeah, it's really exciting to be here today. Love the opportunity to learn from fellow panelists and the audience, and also add any value we can, because we know that we certainly can't do this alone, and everyone, even on this call, there's a lot of work to be done to move the needle in this space. So thank you so much for having me be part of the conversation.
Thank you and welcome. Our next presenter is Michael Kitakis. He's the Executive Director of Spirit of Huntington Arts Center. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Alison, and thank you for everyone on the board for giving us the opportunity to speak and share ideas. And we're so proud to be part of anything that helps, our population. Real quickly, just a background. Spirit Huntington is a not-for-profit. We do believe creative expression transforms lives, and that's for all lives and all abilities. So we do have a very neurodiverse population that we work with, and we're excited to share our programs, with you guys. At the Arts Center, our programs are based on education, vocation, and recreation. So, we do believe education's strong. We have over 500 students a week that come through our center. And we started in a little old garage, which is what this picture is. So we had 3 students, not too long ago, and now it's up to 500. So, when you have a dream and a vision, the whole community does embrace it. So we're excited to share about that. And then hopefully, talk about some of the support. I do think that we will touch upon, I'm sure, as some of our millennials, the people that we are trying to reach out there, and what is important to them. So when we're communicating out there, and we're all big on communication, we want to make sure we're saying the right story. So I'm excited to share our story as we get each other's stories and, really help the whole world. And there's the millennials and the dates, in case you don't know where you're at in that little chart. But it is the largest population that's out there right now in the US. So it's important to think like they think a little bit and share our ideas. And these are some of the great organizations we work with in our digital arts program that we'll share about a little bit further in our discussions today. There's a list of all those great companies. So we're all about telling stories, and that's what's so fun about our program of Artworks, which is a digital vocation program driven towards not just education, but actually hiring. So, and there's some of the employment opportunities that we've been offering our participants. Everything from advertising agencies to graphic designers to website design, including printing companies, and showing, all the opportunities that our population can embrace as a career. And to also share that there is opportunities, designers and jobs that are out there right now are over 200,000 in the country, 160,000 listings currently on web designers and game designers as well. So, this is a viable career. It's all about experiential learning. That's what we do here at the Art Center, teaching digital art and design and graphic design, and the ability to work with not just not-for-profits, but also into, for-profit corporations as well. And obviously we have a great team that manages that Artworks, but the Academy is really built on training and showing them that they need to learn the programs first. That's really what the Academy is all about. And then our team helps manage them through an internship and then ultimately hiring. We've hired 7 in the last year alone. So we're pretty excited that is a great opportunity. And as we expand and grow, we'll continue. And there's a lot of people who aren't working well. That's a graphic was showing 91% unemployment, by the way. If this was nationally spread out and told that story, I think everybody would lose it. They think 9% is high. It's 91% if you have a disability. So we're trying to make a difference here. And everybody on this panel is. Thank you.
And I can actually speak from personal experience that I have worked with Spirit of Huntington. I continue to work with them. It's really been a great opportunity for me to work with the young men and women in Michael's building. And if you haven't been there, you really need to go for a visit. It's really inspiring. So I can speak to that from personal experience. So welcome, Michael. And next, Ms. Christine Ponzio, Executive Director of Winters Center for Autism. Welcome.
Hi, Alison. Thank you so much. My name is Chris Ponzio. I serve as the Executive Director at Winters Center for Autism. I've had the pleasure of visiting both of my colleagues on the call today, Patrick at Spectrum and Michael at Spirit of Huntington. And I think together we share a very common mission, and it really is to help businesses understand the importance, the value, and the talents of neurodivergent people and how they can really strengthen our workforce locally and regionally. The Winters Center for Autism was founded by Joe and Michelle Winters. They were inspired by their son, Sean, who was 28 years old. And Joe Winters, the late Joe Winters, who served as the chairman and CEO of Winters Brothers, which is the green garbage trucks you see around Long Island, started hiring adults with autism and different neurodiverse needs, and really found such a direct benefit for his company that the family invested in creating a job training center. We're located in West Babylon. We opened 10.5 months ago. So although we're not open for very long, we have had tremendous success in working with businesses throughout Long Island. We call them our employer partners, and helping transition people from our training program here into businesses throughout Nassau and Suffolk County, and have been fortunate to have businesses talk to one another about the successes they're having, the talent pool that is out there on Long Island for hiring neurodivergent individuals, and some of the ways to improve business practices to be able to incorporate these young men and women into our businesses and into our communities.
Thank you. Welcome, Christine. And welcome all three of you, really. We are so excited to learn from you today. This is, I know, sort of new territory for a lot of people that are looking to diversify their workforce. So we're going to jump right into it. And I am going to start with Michael Kitakis. Michael, from your experience, what are some practical strategies for creating inclusive hiring practices that embrace the unique strengths of neurodivergent individuals?
So I think one of the one of the biggest things is about education. I know we touched upon that a little bit in our first opening, but I think, you know, education is everything, right? So if we're able to empower our participants in understanding what their abilities are and really play up on their strengths, you know, obviously in our world for the digital arts, they're all on the phones and anyhow. So we're just trying to take that natural stuff and move it into something that's actually you know, profitable for them as well. So by participating into their strengths, by educating them on how that can turn into a career, really does support, you know, the strategy for hiring practices, so that when they go into these opportunities, they talk about their strengths, not their weaknesses. And I think any employer that understands that you're trying to hire on a basis of strength and where the opportunities for growth can be with that individual is what it's all about. So half of our job here obviously is to educate, but it's also to work on their soft skills, to work on the ability for them to understand focus when things get out of hand, you know, how to get back on point. It's funny, I was walking into the men's room, and I'm running into the conference here, and one of our participants came up to me, he said, Mike, he goes, you know, when I'm losing focus, I listen to your advice, and I brought headphones, and now I'm listening to music, and I'm not watching cartoons. And I'm like, that's a great thing. That's a good focus, you know. So it's learning those soft skills and educating them so that when they are able to go out into the workforce, they have those, you know, those opportunities to really succeed.
And then I just want to kind of tack on to that for a moment. Are any of you aware of a resource that maybe our participants could take advantage of that help give guidelines for those hiring practices, for strategies? And if not, if that's something maybe we can work on together, that would be really helpful.
There are resources that are available through SHRM. So from a human resource perspective, being able to understand for businesses, there is also the Autism Playbook that was put together by a consortium of businesses, more in the tech area, but certainly has some really good resources and information. And I also think that Autism Speaks is a good resource as it relates to understanding from a person's perspective who's looking to become an employee, and also from an employer perspective. And there are lots of other statewide organizations, and I think locally organizations that's part of their mission.
Okay, great. And Patrick, do you want to tack on to that?
Yeah, I think what Chris said was right. You know, there are great resources out there. The state agencies we've used as an employer, you know, successfully have been, you know, Access VR have been very helpful. OPWDD, you know, if you are serious about, you know, creating employment opportunities within your business, they will be able to point you in the right direction, as well as Access VR. And we created something ourselves a few years ago called Managing a Mission, about how we've done it, specifically for us with a relationship with a human service agency. Ours is the Nicholas Center. And so, you know, working directly with them, but that's more on the people side in terms of recruitment and retention. If you're looking for more of the business, you know, regularity and things like that and regulations, Chris is right, like SHRM or Access VR or people like that will be able to fill you in there.
So maybe if you have some time, you can send those over to us, and I'll put together a list of links for everybody to share with our attendees afterward, or feel free to type them into the chat if you'd like. So next question is for Chris. Can you share a success story or examples of how neurodiversity has positively impacted team dynamics, innovation, and problem solving within your organization?
Absolutely. There's so many examples of some of our employer partners, but about 33% of our workforce here at Winter Center for Autism who have disclosed are neurodivergent. And one example really sticks out for me. So we have a young man who's part of our team whose job is predominantly serving as our receptionist. He's really our ambassador of first impressions, and he's worked really hard to do that and has embraced that job. And we were working with our advertising firm, and as many advertising firms do, they gave us lots of examples of taglines as we were beginning our branding process, and they were all taped up in our conference room for brainstorming purposes. And of course, our team was coming together to look at that, and we thought, you know what, let's just open this up to everybody. Let's get our entire team in here. And we talk sometimes about neurodivergent individuals and hyperfocus as really being a strength. And this young man came into the room, never even took a seat, looked up and took two different taglines and said, I think that we should actually use this tagline. It's half of this and half of that, but it really talks about what happens here every day. And our tagline is higher with a higher purpose. And it really was his ability to synthesize that information so quickly, identify personally and professionally with what our mission and what our message was. And I think that is often when people ask about what business we work with for advertising, because they love our tagline, we have to let them know we didn't pick any of the 13. It was actually created by a neurodivergent individual who works as part of our team. So I think what also happened as a result of that is when, as an employer, we encourage a lot of innovative thinking. We bring people together for just having those think tank sessions, and it allows people that maybe might not have a particular management or leadership position, but have so much to offer in the way they think. When that is shared publicly, it really allows the entire team to see the benefits and the strengths of a variety of different people and different ways to think and process information.
Well, if that's not a very encouraging story, I don't know what is. That's such a great story, and I love that. Thank you. Patrick, what types of accommodations and support systems can be implemented to ensure neurodivergent individuals can thrive and contribute effectively in the workplace?
Yeah, it's funny, we get asked this question a lot, and we're a unique case in some ways because we have a production facility. So accommodations or creating a more visual workplace just makes sense for safety reasons, for efficiency. And so we've done things like we have markings on the floor, we have numbers on we have a machine that has like print heads, and we have numbers on it so people know what number it's on. We have areas that people should stand, but these are things that any good production facility would have. And so we don't tend to use the word accommodation as much as we would consider it just kind of sense, but also perks, right? So Michael mentioned headphones earlier on, right? And so a lot of our employees will work more efficiently if they've got one headphone in and they're listening to a podcast or something, and they'll be happier and more productive and engaged in that way. And that's what we want, because those people produce the best work, right? So to look at that as accommodation might be seen as, oh, we're giving something up here. And I think what happens sometimes with employers who are looking to do this is their first question is, well, how am I going to have to accommodate, right? And then they start thinking, well, it's going to be expensive, or it's going to create an issue where the other employees may not have access to it, and now we've got problems. But so I prefer perks or benefits, because if I let someone use or say, hey, look, you can wear a headphone, or what, you need an extra 5-minute break, that's okay, because we're a company that understands that. And if that's going to produce your best work, then honestly, who cares, right? And so I think there are a number of things you can do. One of the things we looked at was our communication. corporate structures have a lot of, and businesses fall into, email communication, which might not be the most accessible for everyone. So we explored, SMS messaging for our employees, for people who, wanted to just get a quick text that said, hey, well, don't forget we're closed on Juneteenth. We do video messaging, we'll do video modeling and training. Our onboarding is visual. So people go through modules of using Trainial, which is an app. So I think there's a number of things you can do that are really, really simple and basic, like markings on the floor and laminated visuals and things like that. And you could consider that an accommodation. And then there's other things which are just kind of good common sense things, like allowing someone, if they work best, to have a headphone in, or take an extra 5 minutes. And then, I think looking at how you communicate is really crucial as well. I don't know whether that's an accommodation or just, again, being as inclusive and wanting to reach people, because ultimately you want to reach people with your communication. And so if you have to make an adjustment to that, sure, that could be considered an accommodation, but it's going to benefit you in the long run.
And what about, and I'm going to open this up to all three of you. What about the idea of structure? Do you find that a more structured environment works best, or, I'm not talking so much about, and I like that you said perks and benefits, because I think that's really what it is, but I'm talking more about helping somebody that functions best with routine, scheduling, structure. Do you find that as your team as a whole, that works best for them, or does it really depend on the individual?
Yeah, for us, we have, we have a number of different departments that people, when they come and they work in, they'll work in embroidery, they'll work in screen printing, they'll work in the warehouse, they'll work. So what we found was, and we worked with the Nicholas Center to develop, was a visual kind of board where everyone's name was up there. They could go to the board and they could see where they were supposed to report to that day and who was the supervisor in that department. And so that created a structure and a visual kind of cue that also prevented them from having to go to a job coach or someone and say, where am I working today, right? They go to the board and then they go. The beauty of that technology as well is that, let's say every Tuesday we discovered that someone was having a rough morning, and it happened every single Tuesday morning. Instead of going, what's going on? Maybe something at home, maybe it's this. We can be like, oh, they're in embroidery every Tuesday morning. That's probably what it is, right? Maybe they just don't like embroidery, and they might not be able to communicate that to us. So that's just one example of how we've utilized it, but I'm sure my panelists have other ones as well.
So I think it is true that if you've met one person, you've met one person. So the sense of structure, I think that really is also, as Patrick described, often beneficial to many employees. It's about that communication in advance, being clear on what the expectations are, but then being flexible when you need to be. And I think from our experiences, not just here at the center, but really feedback that we have received time and time again from our employer partners, is that when perhaps human resources or department leader is working through a situation, and it may be one of the neurodivergent individuals, the first thing we'll ask is, well, what would you do if this was any other employee? And then when we assist them in kind of a process that may be a little bit more visual in nature, maybe a little bit more clear about expectations, timelines, we often get the feedback, well, this actually will really help with all of our employees. So I think it really is about thinking more about the company culture and how to communicate with a lot of different employees who think differently, and also have grown up with different access to technology, because that's something that we see, young folks in general really don't see email as an efficient way of always communicating. So I do think that structure can be beneficial, but I do think also incorporating that into a company culture where you can, where it makes sense, but also having that flexibility, because you always want to have opportunities for innovation.
Thank you. Michael, did you want to add anything?
I think the team hit it. I mean, you guys are right on. I mean, structure is everything. And has nothing to do with our neurodivergent part. I think it's all business. And Patrick, you're right up there with the board. I mean, we live on our boards. They come in, they got their name up there, they got their assignments, they got their hours. We had to reinforce it with drop tickets though too. So at their desk, they could also open it up and get their backup. And we also put it on a drive for them, to digitally put up there. So you kind of have a couple safety nets. And I think that's the most important, is to always have some safety nets within the workplace. You were right about the time and having those extra 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that is, to create that productivity level, but making sure they have everything in their place. Our biggest challenge, though, is we also have special needs, and I hate to use that word, but let's say neurodivergent managers trying to manage that team. So in our world, we're trying to teach the teachers as well to embrace the opportunities and changes that they need in that workplace. So and structure is definitely key for success.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it all boils down to you're dealing with people. Doesn't matter, right? People are people are people. And but I think it's interesting to hear for somebody that might be really taking their first step into this, what sometimes the general public perceives as, just kind of those obvious things. So it's great to hear your inside information. I just want to take a look before I go on to my next few questions to see if we have any from our attendees that I can throw out there for a moment. So let's see. Okay, we're still good. Please do type your questions in. I see that you're all in the chat having different discussions, which I think is awesome. If you do have questions, you do not have to wait till the end. So Michael, we're back to you. And I think that this is really important because you've been doing this for a long time. And Christine, Patrick, I would ask you that if you feel you want to add to Michael's comments, please feel free. What role does education and awareness play in promoting understanding and acceptance of neurodiversity among colleagues and leaders?
I think it's everything. And define education, right? So education, it could be a lot of things for a lot of people. Obviously, we have structured classes. We were able to model off of LIU's program. We had one of the program directors who've been doing it for 30 years come in and put our curriculum together to learn about, graphic design, marketing, communication, website design. So, you take it from the basis of this is the curriculum. Now, how do you adapt it? And I think adaptation is important to all of the education. How do you adapt it to fit your classroom at that point? So one class may be a little faster on certain things. They may understand that program or that computer software a little quicker as opposed to other ones. So educating to fit the needs of the group is important, but understanding that every group can be different. So right now we have 6 different groups that are in this education program called Artworks, which is to learn about the the actual software issues. But once they get over that software, it's the applications that are everything. So we try to make it fun. If somebody likes Barney and they want to do a Barney ad, go with it. Let them do the Barney ad. They're still learning. I've had a parent come in the other day and it says, all my kid does is draw on the computer Pokemons. And, I'm like, that's all right. They are drawing on a computer and they're learning that skill. Our job is to try to progress that education into real world applications, which is the second part, which is the experiential learning. So we're able to participate with all these great organizations. We're up to almost 20 different clients now, all in that nonprofit sector. So if we're able to work on a real logo for a not-for-profit organization, like last night we just got the Northport Symphony. It's a very small not-for-profit, but the team is going to be able to work on that logo design, and we bring it into the classroom. Even though their stuff may never ever hit the real world, it is a real assignment that they're going to learn in that class. So once they learn about that, they're even able to see what actually made it through. And I think that's important. So it's not just doing, fictional ads for Ford, great, but if they can actually work on a local not-for-profit, amazing. Once that education gets into place, and they're actually working on things that mean something, when they move into the last stage, which is to try to really get in there and do the jobs, they're familiar with it, so those internships, which is that last phase before we hire, those internships allows them to now work in a different environment and different manner because they take everything they learn, They took their classroom projects, and now we're actually, just like anybody who goes to school and goes to college, that internship is a real thing. It could take up to a year, it could take up to 2 years. But as they actually get the real world skills on real clients, it's easy to transition them into then OJT and some of the things that Access VR offers. And that's how we've been able to kind of onboard them into our system, and then eventually actually full-time and pull the trigger and hire them. So, you know, all these different stages lead up to that process of the education angle. And I can't say it enough. And then also working within our clients and educating them on the process is the other part, just like you would your peers and your, you know, within your company, and understanding the things that matter. So, you know, that is still real world, and it wouldn't matter if it was, you know, neurodiverse or not, is that communication like Patrick and Christine were talking about earlier.
Thank you. Christine, Patrick, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I think that when a business maybe isn't as familiar or has not really, it's just in the starting process of actively trying to create a more neurodiverse workforce, I think acceptance among colleagues and leaders really starts with making a business case, because many people don't necessarily understand that hiring neurodivergent individuals is not charity. It really is good for business. And there's lots of research and lots of metrics that tell us that, having to do with, you know, the bottom line. So I think it really starts with that, that business case, and then identifying if there are leaders or managers that need really more specific training because they might be directly leading a team that has, you know, neurodivergent team members. But I echo really everything, you know, that Michael said about the preparedness, and then really having the businesses prepared. And one of the things that we do in visiting employer partners and obviously continuing to provide technical support is find the natural champions. And I think whenever you go into a business, there are people that aren't, it's not a job title. It's people whose DNA are just the natural helpers, the people who are there and could really be a resource to a person who maybe needs to check in or get verification or clarification, but they might not want to go to their boss or their team leader. So I do think that there's a critical aspect of educating the neurodivergent individual, but absolutely educating the business, the employer as well.
Thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, I just on top of everything that, you know, Chris and Michael said, you know, I think awareness is so important, right? We've all done a pretty good job of it, but there's still a lot more to do. Things like this, panels like this, where, you know, you've got people who are attending and listening and wanting to learn and share, as we are, I think is so important. That the unemployment rate is still so high, as Michael pointed out in his, you know, presentation at the beginning. So we have a lot of work to do, and I think, you know, some of the big players are getting it. You know, you hear of Microsoft's Neurodiversity at Work plan and EY, and I know them. They're great people. They're doing great work. They are only hiring a certain segment of the population, and they're aware of that. It's mostly in STEM jobs, and so we need more businesses, organizations, nonprofits to be looking to hire from, you know, the boardroom to the mailroom and everywhere in between. And so that has to come from, that begins with awareness and education as to the possibilities and an open mind. That's all I would add.
And before we move on to our next question, again, if you are aware of resources that our attendees could tap into to kind of help give them guidelines as they're, you know, maybe just starting out on this process, feel free to put it in the chat or send them to us and we'll share them with them after today. So Patrick, you're up. And this question is really, I think, really important, which is how can organizations effectively address any potential challenges or misconceptions that may arise when integrating neurodivergent individuals into a workplace?
Yeah, I think Chris touched on it really briefly before about, a couple of things, finding champions within the organization is really, really important because you need buy-in. But I think it begins with the business case, as Chris said, to get organizations and businesses to realize that this isn't a nice thing to do. It's a smart thing to do. There is now data from big organizations that are reporting that, retention rate is higher when you have neurodiverse hiring. Millennials, as Michael said, are purchasing from companies that are socially conscious. The dedication and loyalty and hard work. I mean, we saw it during the pandemic of people who, with disabilities performing essential work and still showing up and helping clean the subways through, someone mentioned the chat NICID, New York State Industries for Disabled, helping make sure that the hospitals and things that kept moving. And we have to be loyal to those people, and we have to remember that was work that was done. And so there are a ton of misconceptions and myths, and people are concerned about, legal issues and things like that. But I think the biggest thing to do is get started, make the business case, get the people who are going to bring it through on board through making the business case. Because there's no mission without margin. I get that, right? You've got to be able to pay the bills. And so make the business case, and then, as Chris said, get a champion who's going to be actually making it happen within the organization. Because you can have the executive director or say a CEO say, yeah, let's do this, but if it's not happening at the ground level, where you've got supervisors and staff, it's not going to work. And so I think that's probably the order of which I would suggest doing things, and then having support, having support for the individual that they're entitled to if they need it, right? So a good human service agency can help smooth that transition as well. But yeah, it's something we talk about all the time. And the good news is that there are more and more use cases of businesses and organizations who are implementing and being inclusive through neurodiversity and making a big success of it. So hopefully a lot of these misconceptions will just be kind of proven wrong through the kind of passage of time. But obviously we'll continue to bang that drum as we go.
Thank you. Christine, Michael, would you like to add to that?
I really think that, I think, Patrick, you hit on everything. I feel like it's about being proactive. It's all of the things that Patrick mentioned, and not waiting until there's a problem, but really making a conscious decision and being as proactive as possible.
No, I agree. I think you knocked it. I think knocked it out of the park. I think, like anything, it's really just staying focused on how to play to people's strengths. And if you know that somebody is very, very strong in that, and the company can see that investment, that you're going to get that ROI out of that individual, like Patrick is saying with the mission without margins, it's so true. But, how do we illustrate that fact that person can really bring it to, to the finish line and show the value? And I think those are the things that you set up as an employer, those smaller goals to show the values at different stages. This isn't like take a project and run it from the beginning to the end always. Sometimes if you're breaking it out into those segments, and then you're able to highlight that happened, and that this happened and that happened, and then they start to see all the positive results, then everyone buys in, including coworkers and management. So but that's just how to frame it, and how to present it to the workplace.
Thank you. Christine, how can leaders and managers create an environment that encourages open communication, collaboration, and appreciation for diverse thinking styles and perspectives?
So it really begins at hiring, and really I would say before even recruiting, so that hiring practices are open and intentional to identify creative ways of thinking. So traditional interviews, if you will, are based very much in conversation. But starting even as far back or as early as the interview process, where you're really looking at people's ability to perform the job tasks and making it a much more practical process right from the start. And I think when you start that way, you're already letting new employees know that you value the way that different brains work. And I think that really sets the tone. Also, creating teams that have complementary skills. We know that from the data already, but that's really where people, neurodivergent folks, can shine, because they can bring something to a team that's very strength-based and unique and needed and necessary. And I think for to create that environment that encourages that, you have to have teams that have complementary skills. And it sounds very obvious, but encouraging sharing of ideas or directly soliciting feedback from employees and creating that feedback loop. Because then what happens is, you talked earlier about negative misconceptions. If you have that feedback loop, it really never gets to the point where in a business, you hope that people aren't whispering in the corner about a concern, but they know that if there's a concern, it's clear who to speak to, how to communicate that. And also just having that environment that is open to new ways of thinking about solutions, because I think that's where some of the people who think differently really shine, is if you're open to a new way of marketing or selling a product, or a new way of capturing data or inputting data, and just so many different things. And we've seen that across some of our own systems. Here at the center, we were, as a new program, inundated with online applications. And it was one of the young men who has an IT background who literally looked at all of this data and said, well, this is the way I think we can do it. And this is actually going to accomplish so much without all of these different spreadsheets. So I think just being open to new ways of thinking, but certainly starting at the hiring process.
Thank you so much. Michael, Patrick, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, like Chris said, the hiring process is everything. We realized a few years ago that we were doing it wrong, right? We were sitting across from the table and asking someone to tell us what their skills were and what their goals were in 5 years' time and why we should hire them. And what we realized is, like, we're asking people to give a, verbal kind of non-contextual assessment of their skills, when we have downstairs an ability to just practically assess it by just saying, hey, show us how you would work on this machine, show us how you'd work, your quality control, that stuff. And I thought about it more, and I was like, you wouldn't ask someone whose job it is to be a cameraman to talk about his show reels. You just say, show us your stuff, right? Show us your pictures, show us your video. And so why are we doing that for anyone, but particularly those who are neurodivergent, where we know that part of the diagnostic criteria often is an impairment or delay in social interaction, and then you're asking people to sit in a really social situation, and then we're wondering why unemployment is so high. So we have the person who's head of our social media right now, won't mind me saying, she is neurodiverse, and she told me that before she worked with us, she got told flat out that she didn't get a job because she didn't make eye contact with the interviewer. And it breaks your heart to hear it, but she's super capable and doing an amazing job in our social media, because it's a way of looking at it differently. So I think, just as a really microcosm example, I think Chris is right. Like, it does begin with the interview process, because that's really the gateway to employment for almost everyone who's ever worked in the history of time. So yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
I agree 100%, Patrick and Christine. I think, for us, I don't keep going back to education, but given the opportunity to let them learn and work with them in that mindset of, let's just try some things out, let's learn some things. And then it's a win-win, right? They may not want to work at our place as well, or at any of the other organizations that we align them with. So the best thing is to do that training, that internship. I hate to keep using that word, lack of a better one right now, but that gives us the opportunity to evaluate their strengths and also to put them in environments that they're going to succeed in. we have a saying here, don't make a fish climb a tree, right? So if that's not going to be what they need to do, then why keep forcing that, So the more we can work with them on an educational level, training level, internship level, the more we're going to put them in the right spots and learn about them.
Thank you. I think also not only for those looking to hire, but also for those individuals that are looking to be employed. Patrick, would you say that there are initiatives or resources available to them that we should all be aware of, aside from what has already been listed?
As in a candidate looking for employment?
Yeah, or just even some sort of support throughout their career. I think this is still not for you, but this is still fairly new for quite a few people, even, job seekers. So I think the more resources we can provide, the better off. So I don't know if you're aware of anything really important that you'd like to share.
No, and I think, Alison, this is a situation where this is a really good question, because I'm not actually aware of anything. I think this is where more work needs to be done. I think where, everyone has done a pretty good job, although there's more work to do, but of getting people through the door and employed. It's then retention, getting people to stay, but also growth, right, within the organization. A lot of our employees, with or without disability, but particularly, those who, would be considered neurodivergent, will say themselves they're not the best self-advocates of their own stuff. They're not politicking. They're not trying to tread over people. Again, I'm using generalized terms here, but that's what we found. So we've created a program internally where we're okay, we need to identify people that have been here for a while, and let's look at upskilling. Let's help create some upward trajectory for them, because that's how it should be done. But I'm actually not aware of kind of lifelong career besides, a support agency, or, I don't even know if Access VR or any of the state agencies. I think they're mostly focused on getting people employed, and then it's kind of good luck. And yeah, it's a good question, because I don't know if there's a good answer, right?
So now we've all been inspired to create an app together. And we can do this, guys. So we will we'll work on something.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I kind of know that I already know the answer, part of your answer, but I'm sure you'll be more creative. Are there specific industries or job roles where the benefits of neurodiversity are particularly evident? If so, it makes them conducive to harnessing the strengths of neurodivergent individuals.
Well, obviously, I'm going to talk about the world because we're living in it. I think that most, it's funny in getting into everybody's age group, whether you're a millennial or a Gen X, or, wherever you stand in the game of employers, what you used to look down on, which is having a phone and integrating the phone as part of the job, whether it's music, all these things that are now part of that digital environment, are starting to become positive. So we're trying to take somebody who may live in a gaming world and show them that there's gaming possibilities for their work. If they're living in a, I'm just going to sit here and watch videos, guess what? You can actually produce videos, and you can make them, and, you can start to edit them and shoot them and video. So we're trying to play on what they're doing already in the world of, and expand on it. And we're trying to even get the AI world into our discussions now with our classes, because it is a hot topic, and it is something that we have to embrace and not run away from, and and look at those opportunities of where they can get that support as well. So in the world of digital, and I hate to just keep using that generic world of design, the creativity can come through. And I think that's what's so important, because, and not that there's any disparity on doing task-driven workplace, but if they're able to creatively express some things in there, I think it's a more rewarding type of job, given the opportunity of whatever creativity can enter into that work job. So if they're designing, an ad, and they're able to bring some of that creativity in, and that's great, but not everyone can do that. So there is participants who can do a post like Patrick was saying, and then they can be creative in that thought process. So then that adds a whole new dimension to that job. It's not just the digital side of it. And even programming, we touch upon CS2 and some of the programming for web development, but they're able to then bring in some animated GIF in a unique way. And now there's a creative aspect to that programming that makes them feel, I think, a more sense of a reward and fulfillment. So it's not just this, it's an and, right? So we're always trying to talk about that in the job force, which is great. Here's our idea for a logo. I'll go back to something simple. Here's our idea for logo, do this execution. But by the way, give me one or two of your ideas, which is then wide open for them to do whatever they want. So, and we do show them to clients, because I think any client would like to see that, hey, we got, 20 or 30 people working on your project, and germs of ideas are always in there. The execution may not be perfect, but the idea was in there. We're working on right now one where they were doing a butterfly, and they did it in a very unique way. They had two hands making the butterfly, which never would have thought of, so however they're able to implement their creativity into some of the problems and solutions for problems, I think is across the board for any job. So those are things that we really, really try to stress here, is the creativity in whatever, task you are working on. And obviously in the digital world, I just think that the ability to get a project and sit into their own area and create does work with our IDD world a lot, because the interactions are limited. It's not an all-day ongoing conversation back and forth, although they do have to report in every half an hour, whatever it is, but it's not like every 5 minutes I have to interact with you. It's, I can now, work on the solution myself and bring it back. It also works in, off-site. It works in that world. It works on the person who has severe anxiety, can't get out of their basement, but they want to be part of the workforce. So there is definitely some added bonuses of working in this field.
So thank you. I just want to let everybody know we're at 12:52, and I actually have questions, not from the audience, but I do ask the audience to please start typing in your questions if you do have any. But I actually have a question that I just thought of. Aside from your three amazing organizations, who else comes to mind that you think is modeling this really well right now? Is there a company that you're aware of? Is there an organization that you're aware of, aside from yours, of course, that you think is really doing a great job at integrating and really putting a very positive spotlight on diversifying their workforce with neurodiverse individuals?
I did have the opportunity to spend a week down, and it's not local, but it is a great example if people wanted to look outside of New York, at the L Center of Excellence down in Jupiter, Florida. And they started a work training program for adults, neurodivergent adults. And because they didn't have bricks and mortar, it was actually a really incredible model where they were having adults go directly to work sites and actually do a combination of job training and volunteer work. And with a model where they were working in medical centers, working at a local farm. They were also working at PGA. So what I think is great, and it kind of goes back to what Michael shared about, the digital world and creativity, is that at least locally for us, we have so many, on Long Island, we like to be served, right? We have a lot of service-driven jobs where we have people who maybe, not that they're not creative, but they want to be able to maybe focus on some of their other skills. And I think the L Center kind of figured out where there was something for people who have that creative aspect, and we're working in some of those areas, and then people who were looking to do more retail types of positions, and also the idea of people, and I know this sounds very basic, but for folks who like to be more sedentary versus folks who like a lot of movement, because that seems to be something that we find really important to know early on. So I would say the L Center, I would actually, if they weren't on the call, say Spectrum and Spirit of Huntington, but since they're here, I think the L's was a great example for me. I spent some time there, and I also had time to go to the Merino campus down in Miami, and they're doing really good work with adults as well, and working with the hotel industry and a variety of other restaurants and chain restaurants. So I think in different parts of different states, there's some there's attention being given, which is what we need to really make an impact on that unemployment and underemployment rate.
I think the corporate source is another good one that's locally.
Yes.
I think they, Michael, the executive director, does amazing work.
Absolutely.
Definitely is another one that you might want to throw into the mix locally.
Yeah, I would
Thank
say
you.
corporate source, actually, they do all the janitorial at our building. So yeah, I like those guys a lot. John's Crazy Socks on Long Island is, a really good integrated employer, and nice because you can buy socks from anywhere. And then down in Florida as well, Rising Tide Car Wash is another one. Obviously, you have to have a car in Florida that needs washing, but they have, I think, 2 or maybe even 3 car washes with a integrated employment model. There are a number of different people doing this across the country, but those are the ones I think that have shed the most kind of prominent light on the work that that's being done.
Thank you. And one last very quick question for all of you. If you could see a need met, what would that be? Is there something that you find that you're struggling with that you would love to see this need met with your workforce, with getting the word out about your workforce, with helping them get placed in employment? What would you say is your challenge right now, your biggest challenge? Michael?
Yeah, I think I'll touch upon it earlier, and Patrick just said it. It's the ongoing support. There really is not a lot of that's out there on any consistent basis with any government support in the level of like, all right, now you got your job, now what? Now I need some more help and some more support. And it puts more pressure sometimes on the employer, but I wish there was some other organizations or support groups that would help that.
I completely echo what you share. Michael, I think what happens, and we talk a lot at the center about our model being that bridge between the training and the employer partner, because there are businesses that do not have the budgets like some of the big tech companies, and their local mom and pop businesses who really want to embrace in their small team of people neurodiversity, but need some support. Not only do those employees need some support, but the businesses need some support, because they may have turnover and they may have questions and technical support. And right now our support systems within New York State don't really have the resources, allocated for that. And I think that's what we're seeing in those really high unemployment and underemployment numbers.
Thank you. We're at 12:58. So Patrick, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll just say, we just need a louder voice, right? Like it's a really unknown fact that people with disabilities make up the largest minority group on the planet, but are not the loudest voice. And so, and disability transcends gender, race, ethnicity, religion, all of that. And so I just think more advocacy for, obviously we're focused on employment, but it goes way beyond employment. And so I just hope that can improve in the years to come.
All right. Well, I really want to thank all 3 of you so much. I think that we can have another webinar about the progress that we make now that we have some notes, and we're going to make our app and retire.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to the 3 of you. Much appreciated. If anybody has any questions, you are welcome to get in touch with any of us off this webinar, and everybody will be happy to help you. I wish you all a great afternoon. And once again, thank you so much. If you're not part of the Nonprofit Resource Hub and your nonprofit, join. It is free and you will get great things like this. So thank you so much, all of you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.